All right. Hey there. I am DLC, Sarah Foster Yankee, grades 4th through 5th, and this is my co-host.
Ashley Giles, 4th through 5th, DLC, Team 3.
3. All right. So today we are going to be talking about Unit 6, Contemporary Fiction in 4th grade. This is Lesson 3, Investigating Character of Esperanza in the House on Mango Street.
And so our recordings are for purposes most beneficial to, our principals and our assistant principals and our skills specialists and our special education teachers, because we know all of your plates are really full. So we wanted to create brief lesson synopsis for you guys, little look fors to look for whenever you're into the classrooms, helping teachers, things what you should see for each lesson. So we hope you find this beneficial.
Yes.
And so for lesson 3, we're going to be focusing on two texts, which we've already read. So students will be going back, rereading Vignette 1, The House on Mango Street, and revisiting Vignette 2, titled My Name. The purpose is students are going to be examining Esperanza's interactions with the nun and how other characters' perspectives of her influence her aspirations. So, how other characters perceive her, it influences her aspirations. And finally, students are going to collaborate on a theatrical presentation based on Vignette 1, using details from the text to investigate Esperanza's dialogue, her actions, and her motivations. So really digging back into, basically we'll talk about Esperanza, and how people perceive her and those influence her aspirations.
Or even how she thinks people perceive her.
How she thinks, yes. So a lot of deep thinking for our students. So in lesson 3, we start off for the first time with some speaking and listening. And so this section is very cute. It's divided into 2 parts. First part, it says the students will be reading for dialogue and action. And so this is going to be independent. Really, you're going to have the teacher's going to have the students return back to Vignette 1, which is the house on Mango Street. We're going to basically review those questions they talked about the previous day, those comprehension questions they had for the reading. And the teacher's going to talk about the importance of dialogue. What's the significance of dialogue? It is very important in this vignette because there's no quotation marks. We always teach our kids about quotation marks, and in the vignettes, there's none. So the students they're going to have to go back and reread and really see, well, who's talking here? When are they actually using dialogue, even though there are no quotation marks? And so the teachers are direct the students to activity page 3.1, and they are going to look at that vignette, which is on the house on Mango Street, and underline the dialogue, because remember, there's no quotation marks. So they're going to be underlining the dialogue. Of course, the teacher should model the first one with them, but this is independent. Students should go through the entire vignette underlining dialogue. When something is being said out loud, right? So make sure that the teacher tells them dialogue when they're speaking out loud. Then they're going to go back in another color, and then they're going to talk about the actions, okay? So if you want, so you could say underline dialogue 1 time, underline the actions 2 times, underline dialogue twice, and the actions 1 time. And if you're a teacher who prefers to use color, you could do color. So however you decide to do this, but there needs to be a distinction between what's the dialogue and what's the action. And so for this portion, that's it, basically. They're going to go through and see where's the dialogue and where's the action. And teacher models it, of course, and the students do that independently. And this all is going to take them into part 2, which is acting out a scene.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we talk about that part, I did want to point out there's a really good check for understanding for that reading for dialogue and action component, where the teacher basically calls on a student and she asks
Mhm.
them what they underline as the first line of dialogue, and then does a poll for the class to see if they agree or disagree, and then calling on another student to see what they underline as the last action, and then again repeating that poll, agree or disagree. And that's a good opportunity to clarify any misconceptions about dialogue and action before they go to the next part, because that's going to be really
Right.
important for them to be able to act out that scene.
Right. So yes, that's great for, yeah, did they get it? Do they know? Because that's going to prepare them for part two, which is acting out the scene. Because if you don't know, if they don't have a good understanding of what's the dialogue and what's the action, when they act out the scene, then it's going to be evident that they didn't get it. So thank you for pointing that out. So for the next section, it's 20 minutes. You're going to place your students, be strategic about that in small groups. And so you're going to give the students, um, they're going to be placed into groups because they're going to act out the scene. So, how many students should be in the group? Well, you have the director, someone needs to be the director, someone needs to be the nun, and someone needs to be Esperanza. And if we could go to the activity page 3.2. So on 3.2, whoever, as students decide who they're going to be when they act out these scenes, activity page 3.2 is very important because it gives them some things to think about. If you're the director, this is what you, it's just some guiding questions to help them when they're acting out their particular roles. So, for example, as the nun, think about how would the nun walk? You know, based off the description in this vignette, how would the nun walk? So, we're going to have our students get together, pick their roles, and refer to this sheet 3.2 so they can really get into the character, really get into the role of who's saying this dialogue and who's doing the action. So the teacher should allow them about 10 minutes to rehearse the scene, you know, read over their parts. When are you talking? What are you doing? What are your actions looking like? And then they're going to practice with their group, and then they're going to perform. And so if you have some volunteers that want to go first, but have them come up and volunteer. So as the groups are up here performing their scenes, and I'm going to go back. As they're rehearsing, teachers should be walking around, monitoring, you know, making sure that students are understanding their role. And then when it's time to perform the scenes, well, our audience, they have a task. So they need to notice when listening as an audience. So there are some notes. What are you supposed to do as the audience? You know, what are you doing? Um, and noticing how are their moods changing and noticing what actions are they doing. So basically, our people who are our students that are watching need to be noticing how are they talking? What are they saying? What are they doing? Let me see what else. And then here it says you're going to congratulate your actors or your directors. Um, Teacher asking questions about the emotions of Esperanza and the nun. How did it change from the beginning of the scene to the end of the scene? And so basically, after each scene, after each group, teacher is prompting these questions about, you know, the character. What are her emotions? How does she sing? How does she feel? Just ensuring that the students are listening or watching those students as they perform those scenes and noticing how these emotions are changing.
Yeah,
And that'll lead us to the writing.
I feel like something really just that stands out to me in that lesson, both for the person playing the nun and the student playing Esperanza, and even really for the director, is how the
Mhm.
nun says, "You live there." Because it has
Yeah.
like such a profound effect on Esperanza, just that question. So how does the nun say that? Like, does she say, "You live there"? Or does she
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
"You live"? Like, how does she say it that really causes this reaction from her? So I think,
And then it goes back to like our primary focus. How do the perceptions of other characters and of what Esperanza thinks, you know, what other people think. So yeah, I mean, it's how they say it
Yeah.
It's very important.
So she must have said it some type of way to make her
Okay.
feel like, like, are you putting down my house? Like, so
Yeah.
how,
Like,
like,
do I want to say I live there or not?
yeah, like, how did she say it? Like, I'm really
So just
curious to
really
see. Yeah.
ensuring that when your students are acting that out, that they're acting that out as if, she responds in that way, right? Esperanza should
Yeah.
respond like, well, what do you mean? Do I
Yeah.
live there? Yeah. Not just, oh, you live there? No, we know her
Right.
feelings about her house. She's not happy about her
Yeah. That's
house.
not how she
So
said it. I know that much. That's not how she said it. So how did she
that
ask?
goes back to using those textual evidence, those descriptor clues to help them realize how are these characters really saying what they say, how they say
Mhm.
it, their dialogue.
Reading between the
Very important.
lines.
Yes, yes.
All
And
right.
it'll lead us into writing
Mm,
after that. So they get to have a little fun, up and movement, acting out. Kids love that.
yes, I would love to see that part of the lesson. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Okay, so for writing, we do have a cub. The students are going to know the Esperanza's mood changes in the scene with the nun in vignette one. They're going to understand why Esperanza's mood changes in vignette one, and they're going to be able to write opinion statements about Esperanza's mood changes using evidence from the text for support using Writer's Journal 3.3. So that speaking and listening activity where they're acting out their scene is going to be really important, um, to help them understand that scene so that they're able to write these opinion statements.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have two parts of our writing lesson. For the first part, students review feedback from, it's the writer's journal page that they did in the previous lesson. So for about 5 minutes, they're going to be reading the feedback that they received from the teacher to themselves. The teacher is asking them to think about how they can use that feedback as they write today, and allowing them the opportunity to ask any questions that they want to ask about the feedback that they received. So from there, we're going to the writing an opinion statement part of the lesson for 15 minutes. The teacher explains that they're going to apply their close reading of the scene to write an opinion statement. And she's going to read or have students read the directions for Writer's Journal, page 3.3. Let me see if I have it on the next slide. Nope. So right here, the directions. The teacher is going to draw the students' attention to the word change in the question, how did Esperanza's mood change through the scene with the nun? Because that's really important for them to understand. The students will complete this page independently, and the teacher is going to provide sentence frames and prompts to support students as needed. Right. So once they are done with that, the teacher is going to be soliciting some volunteers to read their opinion statements, ensuring that they have used text evidence. And the key takeaway here is that Esperanza was playing happily until the nun started talking to her.
Mhm.
Yeah. The so the teacher just reinforces that the evidence in this case points to one answer clearly. Like you can clearly use evidence to support that she was happy, and then the nun said, "You live here," and like her mood totally changed.
Changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but sometimes in reading, you can get many. There are many possible answers from the same piece of evidence. Okay,
Right.
so just awesome for them to know for the future too. Yep. Sometimes you get one answer from the evidence, but sometimes there's a lot of answers
Could be something
based
else.
on the text
Yeah.
evidence. Oh,
Mhm.
and that takes us to the reading.
And I was gonna say, and also depending on your own experiences, I mean, yeah, we're going about Esperanzas, but think about the other characters too.
Yeah.
Like why would they say certain things? So it's just to me really deep reading. You have to really understand. That's why we're doing so many. We're going back to the same vignettes, so we
Yeah.
can really get a deep understanding of why she's feeling this way, or changing, or all that, the mood, all that, based off the tone, all that stuff, right?
Right.
So for reading, we're going to be investigating. Well, we have a
I thought it
cut.
was there.
Okay,
Nope, it
thought it
disappeared.
was that's okay. So for reading, we're going to talk about character. Okay, this is a whole group activity. So we're going to be investigating character 20 minutes. The teachers are going to start off by reviewing the theme. Here's our word, aspirations. Remember, and so they're going to review that theme from our previous lessons, in which we mentioned that word is going to carry all the way throughout our unit. And the teacher's also going to introduce character investigation. So we're going to dig deeper into character. And we said, was that lesson 1, lesson 2? Well, we set the foundation on character, and now we're digging in. The teacher is going to talk about theme again, just to review, referring to other books too, because this, to me, theme was always hard for students because it's not specific to that book. It needs to be universal. And the theme of aspiration could be in another book. You know what I'm saying? So ensuring that your students know that. So the teacher's going to start off with talking about theme, how it's universal. And then she's going to say, talk about what was the theme from our first thing that we talked about. The first theme was aspirations. And so on the board, the teacher is going to need to write theme 1, aspirations, because sometimes in books, there are more than one themes, especially as students get older, we're getting into more complex texts. It's not just going to be one theme. So the first thing we have from these vignettes are aspirations, okay? And then the teacher is going to ask these higher level thinking questions. Why do people have different aspirations? Because this is going to lead them into character investigation. So then the teacher explains, okay, so why do people have different aspirations? And then it goes into, well, why might Esperanza have different aspirations? Have students think about that. They can go back to their Writer's Journal 3.1 to gather some evidence, to see, especially go back to that scene with the nun, right? As to why, and they really need to give some evidence as to why, what is the most likely reason for Esperanza's aspirations. And so we want our students to say that she wants other people to think positively about her and treat her better than what the nun suggests. Like she says, you live there. So it's already like there's a negative connotation to what the nun is trying to say about Esperanza. But what we want students to say is other people can think differently. The nun may think one way, but somebody else that we may read about could think another way, as what Sarah, you were saying before in the last lesson.
And that it's really important to Esperanza what other people think about her. Like it impacts her like deeply.
And I think it's so important because our kids at this age, think about this, social media, they care. So really, you can use current events now with your students when talking about this with these vignettes and these lessons, So that brings us to theme 2. So the teacher is going to write theme 2 on the board. And so theme 2 that they're going to be reading about is called People's Perceptions. And so that goes back to what Sarah was saying, is how other people think, how they think or what they think about Esperanza, because like we said, it matters. So this is what we want our students to be saying. She cares about what other people think, and everybody doesn't think the same way. They all think different. People think differently. So when we talk about the word perceptions, when you write that theme on the board, this may be a word that your students don't know, that those students don't know. So hopefully teachers are telling them to go to the glossary. We're going to look that word up, really have a conversation about what is perceptions. The big question here for this section is Esperanza concerned about other people's perspectives? So that should be a big key question that you're hearing your teachers say. And students should be saying, yes, she cares. She's very concerned. They're going to teachers should direct the students to turn to a blank page, talking about people's perspectives from vignettes 1 and 2. Let me see where that would be. And so in this vignette, there are a lot of blank pages here. And if you notice, and I don't know if you go to that I put it on here. I don't think I put the blank page on here. Okay, I did. But anyways, there are 2 definitions also next to this page, and it says perception and then it says scene, because what students are going to have to do is they're going to have to pick out 3 quotes from the text. displaying evidence of how Esperanza cares. How, let me start over. Providing evidence that people's perceptions are important to Esperanza. So they're going to have to cite the evidence in the text. How do you know Esperanza cares about what these people think? And so students are going to need to go back into the text and prove, citing evidence to support that she cares about their perceptions or that they're important to her. And so that is what they are doing. Teacher can ask some guiding questions. For example, what is the evidence that Esperanza cares about how others feel about her? And there are different and different vignettes on different quotes that students can pull from that will let you know that people's perspectives are important. Why would you want to have the house like that? Like the houses on TV. So just ensuring that students are going back into the text and citing that evidence on how people's perspectives are important to Esperanza, things that they say.
I think this activity is a really great tie into the purpose of the core text, why we're using the text that we're using. Because in that first vignette, we know that the imagined house that she wants to live in, she wants to live in that house so that people see her differently, right? She thinks people
Right.
feel a certain way about her because she lives in the house on Mango Street. And in my
Yeah.
name, she wants to be called ZZ the X so the people perceive her
Somebody
a
else.
certain way. So basically everything that she writes about is to change the way that people perceive her because she feels
Yes.
a certain way about herself because of the circumstances, because of the house she has, because of the maintenance
Right.
she has.
And so I think if the teacher really explains this well, I mean, students should really be vocal about it because I'm sure that they go through that. As adults, we go through that too. I mean, this is deep work. So
Yes.
hopefully this is going to evoke some remember one of our big goals of because we got this curriculum is to foster conversationalists. And this right here, I think could really bring out those conversations with your students if the lesson is executed properly.
Yeah.
Really allowing students to dig deep into that, to think deeply about people's perspectives
Yeah.
and the importance of it to kids.
Because it's certainly
Yeah,
relevant. Like it's everyone can
absolutely.
relate to this.
Yeah, and so basically they're selecting three quotes, and that's how this reading portion ends. What are three quotes that lets you know that it's important to her, how people perceive her. So, and that's how this section ends. And then it says transition to the writing activity. Remind the students that they've looked at Esperanza's aspirations for the future and how others might perceive her. Now in writing, they're going to have a chance to write a creative story using this evidence that they've got about how other people perceive her and how that's important to her.
Yes.
So reading sets you up for the writing.
Yep. I love the flow,
Yes.
how they just flow into one another seamlessly. Right. So, there's the cup. So, in writing, students are going to know how Esperanza would behave if she had the name ZZ the X based on vignette one. And that should probably be vignette two because I think that was my name. Vignette what is about the house. They'll understand why Esperanza would behave differently if she had the name ZZ the X. And they'll be able to draw on inferences they have made about the difference between ZZ the X and Esperanza to create an alternate narrative for vignettes 1 using Writer's Journal 3.4. All right. So this is basically the whole of the writing and alternate narrative. Students do this independently and it'll take about 15 minutes. So the teacher's role for this component is basically just reviewing the instructions for Writer's Journal 3.4. Let me check and see if I have it here. There it is. So basically students are going to be rewriting the Esperanza nun scene as if Esperanza were ZZ the X. Okay, so she's just telling exactly the same scene, but instead of Esperanza, now she's ZZ the X. So they're going to go back and look at the text for clues about ZZ the X and what she may have wanted to happen. Really remembering to look for those details. The teacher is supporting students in this by providing some sentence frames or prompts for their narratives. And they're writing this whole time. So basically everything that you've done in the lesson up until this point has been supporting them to be able to do this. Because if they have a good understanding of that scene, then they're just going to change it and write it now from ZZ the X niece's perspective.
Yep.
Okay. So I think that's pretty much is the writing.
Concludes. Yeah.
Then after class, the teacher is going to collect those writer's journals, doing a lot of checking over student work for 3.1, making sure that they understand the difference between dialogue and action. On 3.3, she's going to read over their opinion statements and make sure that students have evidence to support their statement. And then for this activity page, the teacher is evaluating pieces for clarity, creativity, and detail, and making sure that it's showing how ZZ the X, not Esperanza, would
Mhm.
feel and act towards the nun. And then providing feedback if the narrative has gone too far from the original. So if they wrote a whole different story, like wait a minute, because it should
Right.
pretty much it should align with what's already there, just
A
that
different,
yeah, that different perspective.
yeah.
Okay, and that concludes lesson 3.
Lesson 3.
Alrighty. So again, thank you for watching. We hope that you found this helpful. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments, you have our email, our Twitter, and our YouTube channel.
See you next time.
Bye.